Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our webinar. It is the greatest pleasure for me today to open this webinar and to be your MC for the day. My name is Gueorguieva, and I'm the Manager of International Trade and Strategic Relationships for the Chamber of Commerce and Industry Queensland. We will be facilitating this webinar from two locations, Brisbane and Tokyo. So if there are any technical issues, we hope to be forgiven. This webinar is combined efforts of three entities: the Chamber of Commerce and Industry Queensland, CCIQ, the Queensland-Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry, QJCCI, and Trade and Investment Queensland, TIQ Japan. And I would like to thank our partners, QJCCI and TIQ, for their commitment to make this webinar happen. I would also like to acknowledge that this webinar is funded by the Free Trade Agreements Market Entry Grant, and we would like to thank Austrade for their support. I have here with me today at our CCIQ webinar room, Chris Whitecross. Also, we've got our Japan strategist, Ken Bennett. Our special guest, Adachi, Trade and Investment Commissioner Japan for TIQ, and Daiji and Nami from his team will be joining us from the stunning Tokyo today. Thank you, Tak, Daiji, and Nami for joining us. The agenda for today: next, Adachi, Queensland Trade and Investment Commissioner, Trade and Investment Queensland, Japan, will provide us with the overview of a post-COVID Japan. Then Daiji Takashima and Nami Nagao from TAC's team will be discussing the post-COVID opportunities in Japan. After that, Ken will show us with his presentation how to maximum benefit from these opportunities with the right market entry strategies in place. And finally, Chris Whitecross, the president for QJCCI, will make the closing remarks. Once we've finished with the formal presentations, all of our presenters will be part of a panel, and this is your opportunity to ask questions. You will be on a mute during the presentations. However, you can ask questions by typing in the designated area. As the time is limited, we will follow up with you after the webinar if you have some unanswered questions. All attendees will be receiving a follow-up email with links to the presentations and the recording of today's session from our marketing team. Let's get started. It is the greatest pleasure to introduce our first presenter for today and a very special friend of CCIQ International, Adachi, Trade and Investment Commissioner Japan for Trade and Investment Queensland. Adachi has been the Queensland Government's Trade and Investment Commissioner based in Japan, the state's second largest export market, since 2004. Before this appointment, Tak was a Senior Investment Commissioner for North Asia at Invest Australia, following a successful private sector career as an investment banker, working in both Japan and Australia, with Deutsche Bank as Director Global Markets. Prior to that, Tak held senior positions with Andersen Consulting, now Accenture, Jones Lang LaSalle, and Macquarie Bank in Australia. He holds a Bachelor of International Law from Sophia University in Tokyo and an MBA from the Australian Graduate School of Management at the University of New South Wales, with scholarships with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Australia-Japan Foundation. Welcome, Tak.
Thank you, Diana. And I'd like to first acknowledge CCIQ and QJCCI for giving us opportunity to talk to your members about Japan. So my job is to really talk about a big picture about Japan initially, to set the scene, and before I hand over the discussion on food and ag opportunities to my team. So I have asked my team to put together, like looking back 2020, and then, in terms of COVID and how that affected Japan. It's been a very challenging, a long year for all of us, I think, and I didn't realize it's only a few months to go before Christmas. So since the Diamond Princess, the big ship, the cruise ship situation in February, Japan has gone through really two waves of COVID pandemic situations, and for Japan to manage the health risks while balancing the economy, the two challenges they have managed relatively well. Early this year, we were so excited about having the Tokyo Olympics, but that's been postponed. And only last month or two, we have seen the new Prime Minister starting in Japan as well. So please, next page, please. And then just to talk about the effect of COVID on Japan in terms of the economy. Yes, of course, Japan's no exception in terms of feeling the effect of the COVID. The second quarter GDP, that's actually quarter-on-quarter figure, but it was minus 28%. Obviously, it's a lot of contractions in terms of economy, domestic consumption as well as export. But I must say that Japan has managed the employment situation relatively well. Japan had a very strong economic growth for like 6-7 years under the previous Prime Minister Abe. And then, at the moment, I think a lot of Japanese corporates are weathering this effect by keeping as many staff as possible on the payroll. So the employment rate is, compared to many other developed countries, relatively low, around 3%. We're just talking about Japan in a broad pictures. The other interesting point is that Japanese corporates have actually entered into the pandemic relatively well positioned with really high cash position on their balance sheet. So that's probably is a bit of a savior. Also, household in Japan, when the crisis hits, like 2011 earthquakes or 2008 Lehman shock, the people in Japan have a tendency and a propensity to save, so that saving rate is really shooting up. And the other interesting observation I made was about a month ago, Warren Buffett bought 5% of top 5 Japanese companies' shares. So some people taking as a vote of confidence in Japan's future. How the TIQ and also business in Japan are adapting to this new normal is interesting. I'm sure that we're all exploring the new way of doing business. Obviously, this sort of webinar has been very common. We've been participating in a number of those. We have also initiated like a B2B sort of a web-based online business matching. We call it Queensland Hour. We experiment with the education sector at the moment, introducing Queensland institution against number of Japanese agents. For example, we have done a virtual trade mission recently. We also think that a virtual site visit started to be very effective. Particularly, Queensland has a lot of regional cities and opportunities. While the border is closed, we could ask our regional staff to take the iPad to show the sites or the actual plant, or for instance, to really give a Japanese company a feel for it. Virtual trade shows, I think my team will talk about FoodX later, and e-commerce, which is also a big opportunity. So before I go too deep into talking about Japan, I want to introduce my team to talk about opportunities in food and ag sector specifically. Thank you. Over to you, Daiji.
Thank you very much, Adachi-san. Now I'll be presenting the post-COVID, current and post-COVID, now into the impact of COVID-19 on food sectors. For the restaurants and food services, for the major restaurant chains, reportedly 50% or more revenue decrease due to the government stay-at-home campaign. Many restaurants have began shortening their hours or closed operations. Most of wedding and corporate functions and parties are cancelled. However, 10% rise in revenue for the fast food market, including pizza delivery and takeaway businesses. Most of the businesses who survived is back to normal operation as government lifted restrictions on operational hours. Hotel industry also declined. As you may know, 2020, Tokyo Olympics has been postponed and all the international tourists has been unable to come to Japan due to the closure of border. Hotel occupancy was below 20% in most of Japan, although Japanese government has started Go-To campaign for the Japanese people to encourage travel domestically by giving 35% cashback by government for the accommodation booking or package deal with the transport. For the convenience stores, well, it declined overall as well. However, increased the sale of food items, including bread, lunch boxes, ready-made foods, frozen foods, and sweets rose by 3.8% compared to last year. For supermarket sector, this trend is very similar to Australia. Retail sales have increased due to the Japanese government request for people to stay home. Supermarket sales at some stores were so high that workers were allegedly having difficulty restocking goods because of the constraints of or lack of stock. Since the supermarket is still showing strong sales record and it's predicted that it will be strong for a while. So what's been affected most on the Japanese market? Well, oversupply of Wagyu beef, premium seafood, and premium fruits. 5-star hotels and 5-star restaurants have been impacted due to no face-to-face meeting amongst people, so that there was no gift giving or business dinners or lunches. Although often these 5-star places does not provide takeaway businesses, so that there was no reason for the people, there was no reason that it was impacted most. However, again, Japanese government is starting Go to Eat campaign from October 1st to encourage more people to eat out by giving cash back. Next slide, please. Now to positive challenges after the COVID-19. Due to stay-home campaign, people stayed home and took an opportunity to cook at home or utilised takeaway services. Baking products were skyrocketed, particularly flour products or desserts-related products. While restaurants and bars sales went down, the alcohol spirits sales increased at retail level so that people could drink at home or even drink through online systems such as Zoom. Next slides, please. Market opportunities after the COVID-19 in Japan, where the consumer will be utilizing more of online shopping to avoid crowds. People's lifestyle will change and focus on more healthy and functional foods to boost the immune system. Functional foods such as organic, honey, protein bars will increase in opportunity. Nuts and dried fruits, convenient and healthy value-added products, food and beverages, fruits and vegetables, and natural organic products will be in opportunities. Beef continued to grow both retail and food services sectors, particularly red meats. With the Japanese government mentioning that they will go ahead with 2021 Olympics in Tokyo, there will be more international focus from end of this year. Next slide, please. For MLA activities, COVID-19 adaptation marketing has been pushed by MLA, with the food services and restaurants opportunities declined. MLA has been pushing to introduce different cuts such as Scotch fillets and rum to the retail market. There are no sampling options available since COVID environment, so MLA has been providing market funds to the beef importers to provide ways of eating new type of cuts at home. To recommend cooking style and recipes that are utilized in Instagram and other social media. And finally, MLA has continued to support supermarkets to handle the new products and marketing of Aussie beef. Next slide, please. Now to seafood. Extremely price sensitive and impacted premium seafood during the COVID environment. Most of the imported products are very sensitive. Prawns are a potential opportunity as a major Japanese seafood company has invested in prawn farming in Australia. Some Japanese type of high-priced fish such as flounder and red bream will have an opportunities. Locally sourced Japanese seafood command high prices as the freshness of fish is very important and often destroying fish's spinal cords when the fish arrives at port for offloading. This method keeps the fish fresher and tastier as fish has less stress of dying. And it's difficult to educate new eating style as Japanese people are accustomed to traditional seafood diets. And it's very different market to other Asian markets such as Chinese style of cooking, as Japanese intend to like raw or grilled as a main way of eating. Next slide, please. Successful infrastructure model. This is just one of the examples that horticulture exports from Queensland to Japan. Relationships and trust are the key issues when you're doing business with Japanese companies. And firstly, you need to open an account with a Japanese company. Or what is an account? If you don't have an account agreement, Japanese business will not be able to do business. To open an account, importer will have to trust the exporter and think that they will do long-term business with an exporter. And to also open an account, it requires approval from their senior management to open an account. It's a bit like contract, but even between Japanese business to business, they will not open an account easily. And having an account is a strength and equals to trust. Due to relationships and consignment of opportunities, Queensland small growers were able to export under this model. This is also better for the importer as they don't need to deal with a wide range of exporter or grower and better communication channel for everyone. Next slide, please. How did this successful infrastructure model develop? Well, it started in 2014 with a trade mission to Japan. 6 months of ongoing discussion and detailed specification was discussed. In the following year, trial shipments started with many things to learn. And thanks to the number of DAF-related projects, horticulture exports from Queensland to Japan started and continue to increase. If you can see, all of these images are now either working to be exported or to be exported until now. Now I'll pass it on to my colleague Nami Nagao, who will talk about GQFE project and FoodX. Thank you.
Thank you, Daiji, and hello everyone. I'm Nami Nagao and I'm a Business Development Officer here at Trade and Investment Queensland's Tokyo office, and I look after the food and ag sector with Daiji. So today I'll be talking briefly about our previous, ongoing and also upcoming projects that we've been working on here at CCIQ Japan. So in the hort space, we're currently working on a project funded by Queensland's Department of Agriculture called Growing Queensland's Food Exports, also known as GQFE. And what this is a collaborative project involving core members such as QDAF, CCIQ, the post-harvest team at UQ, and also a major Japanese importer. So in this project, we're looking at taking a very holistic approach, and we are collaborating with parties such as our growers, freight forwarders, importers, and also our final customers as well. So we're looking at this project to achieve exports of Queensland's lettuce and also kabocha pumpkins to Japan. So the reason why we've decided to focus on these two items is because the opportunity was actually identified through two of our previous projects CCIQ and DAF have collaborated on in the past. And we're also working to take advantage of our counter seasonality and also our favourable trading agreements between Japan as well. So this GQFE project involves various trial shipments, and for lettuce, we're currently trying to overcome issues such as shelf life, meeting the Japanese specific spec requirements, and also managing hitchhiker pests such as the Rutherglen bug, which is an endemic species to Queensland. Next slide, please. We're also similarly working on trials for kabocha, where we're growing Japanese varieties of pumpkins in Queensland to be re-exported back to Japan. So our first commercial shipment actually arrived in June this year, which was after 3 years in the making. So we were really excited when they were well received on the Japanese end. And what we're trying to do at the moment is to grow that volume for the upcoming season. Next slide, please. So in addition to horticulture, we also do work with our value-added food exporters as well, with the kitchen garden e-commerce project being a relatively recent example. So for this project, CCIQ Japan, Osprey Tokyo, and other participating state offices with presence in Tokyo have actually collaborated on an e-commerce initiative with a trendy Japanese importer supermarket. No, apologies. They actually handle imported products. So they do sell a range of gourmet food and beverage items. So with Kitchen Garden, we established a portal called Aussie Style, which was a special section within Kitchen Garden's online store on Japan's second largest e-commerce platform called Rakuten. And we dedicated that to showcasing a range of Australian products. So essentially, when the shoppers access this portal, they would put their cursor above each of these states, and that way they could find information and images on things like the state's history, climate, lifestyle, and food trends, really giving the shoppers an idea of where these products came from, and essentially providing a story before the shoppers went on to make their purchases. So overall, the Kitchen Garden project was a really good way to broaden the profile of our food products directly to the Japanese consumers. And also by introducing Kitchen Garden to our Tourism and Events Queensland's Tokyo office, we were also able to cross-sell food and tourism by leveraging Kitchen Garden's blog and Twitter platforms, as they had a very wide viewership. So we could co-promote various social media content surrounding our food and tourism sectors. Next slide, please. Now, just a bit of background on Japan's online shopping sector. Japan is currently the world's third largest e-commerce market, and we're growing at a rate of roughly 5% per year. So this is a pretty significant growth year on year. And we're also expecting further growth given the COVID environment really revamping the consumer's shopping behavior. And so leveraging this trend, CCIQ Japan are currently in the works looking into developing further projects in the e-commerce space. And so we'll be keeping you all updated of any new announcements. Next slide, please. Now, for our upcoming project, we're excited to announce that CCIQ Japan will be exhibiting at FoodX Japan 2021. So FoodX is one of Asia's largest food and beverage trade shows, and next year it'll be held from the 9th to the 12th of March. Now, we do understand that given the current situation with COVID and the related international travel restrictions, it may be difficult for Queensland exporters to commit to exhibiting at a show like this, but we really do encourage companies to come on board as it is still perhaps one of the most effective ways to make the initial connections and contacts with Japanese importers in key decision-making roles. So in regards to FoodX, the expression of interest, or the EOI, went live on the 1st of this month and will be closing on Friday, 9th of October. So we still have ample time for you to submit your interest, and we are still welcoming more applications. The link to the expression of interest will be sent through by Diana and her team after this webinar. So if you could just have a look through that, that would be much appreciated. Next slide, please. Okay, so although the specific details will be outlined in the EOI, I'll just briefly go through the content to provide you with a better understanding of the arrangements of the show. So to participate in FoodX with us, we have two options. The first option is our $500 option, which is applicable only for ambient products. So essentially we will have shelves within our booth for ambient products that don't require refrigeration or freezing. The second option is our $800 package, which allows you to display your chilled products in our display fridge within our booth. So on this screen on the right-hand side, you will see some of our example booth designs from last year. So if you could just imagine having a string of these within the Australian Pavilion alongside other states, that's what FoodX 2021 should look like. So if you could just take a look at the first photo at the top, we have an example of two companies exhibiting in a full 3x3 meter booth with CCIQ Japan located in the middle. So although we have eliminated the full booth option this year, the shelf option refers to the back shelves you can see behind the CCIQ booth. So again, these are for ambient products. Although we don't have a picture of the display refrigerator yet, if you could just imagine having a display showcase with various, chilled products there, that would be the $800 option that we have up for offer. As an exhibitor, you can display your products, hand out samples, have business meetings, and also attend networking events as well. We within the TIQ booth will have a dedicated meeting space with tables and chairs, so you're more than welcome to use that as well. However, please bear in mind that attendance is optional. So should COVID-related international travel restrictions still be in place, or if you just prefer not to travel at all, TIQ Japan staff will be at the booth to represent you on your behalf and or connect you through virtual means. And so all the contacts that we make on your behalf, including the business cards, will be scanned and sent to you after the show. So these are the sorts of services we can provide if you exhibit with us for FoodX. But then again, the further details for cancellation policies and the COVID-related recovery plans are outlined in the EOI, so please make sure you check this. Next slide, please. Now, this is the scheduled project timeline for FoodX. So the EOI was sent out on the 1st of this month, closing on Friday, 9th of October. And then from there, we'll start organising payments, planning of the booth design, preparing delivery of samples, construction works, and if this all goes online, we'll be working to launch your branding on FoodX virtual exhibition as well. So just a FYI, we've got 10 Queensland companies already on board at the moment. And of course, we're still welcoming more, so please express your interest by the 9th of October. Next slide, please. Okay, so now I have run through the sorts of projects we do run at TIQ Japan, but of course, in addition to these projects, we also do work on a one-on-one basis. So if you have any inquiries, we can provide you with bespoke in-market assistance and also intel as well. So please feel free to contact us and we can work together on your export journey. Thank you, and I'll now pass back to Diana.
Thank you, Daiji and Nami, for the comprehensive insights of the post-COVID Japan and the opportunities presented. The reality is that it is a critical time for businesses to start planning, to start strategizing, and to start developing key relationships to trade with Japan to get a competitive edge when we don't have to deal with the global impact of the COVID pandemic. Key message to exporters: prepare now to reap the benefits of 2 free trade agreements, JEPA and CPTPP, and the opportunities presented, and tax team will assist you in market. Knowing what the opportunities are is not enough for you to succeed. You need to know what the right strategies are for entering this market, specific to your business and to your product. And this is what our next presenter will discuss. It is the greatest pleasure for me to introduce Ken Bennett, Managing Consultant and Principal ExportOne Consulting, and also our external FTA Mid-Japan strategist. With over 35 years of direct experience in international business development as a consultant to several global enterprises located around the world, Ken possesses an international background in trade journalism, strategic business development, export facilitation, and export education. A confirmed academic, Ken has worked and lectured in the higher education space for nearly 25 years in Australia, including an 18 years period as both as an academic and executive at Griffith University, inclusive of being the director of the Griffith University Queensland Government Small Enterprise Export Centre and as the managing consultant for the Centre for the Study of Australia-Asia Relations. Educated in Japan, South Korea and Australia, Ken is a former fellow of the Australian Institute of Management. Ken has worked as a consultant to the US Department of Commerce in Japan as part of bilateral negotiations and has been State Manager Queensland for the Australian Institute of Export. Welcome, Ken.
Welcome and welcome everybody. COVID-19 has been a test and testing almost all businesses on both sides of the Pacific. For the suppliers from Australia and for the importers and wholesalers, retailers, distributors, and consumers in Japan. Next slide, please. In looking at the market entry strategies post-COVID, I think it's important that we look at what happened just prior to COVID, because we all know that COVID has changed how people drink, dine, and congregate. But now we are seeing an effect on saying COVID is affecting people, how they purchase things, import things, distribute, and of course, retail. Next slide, please. Prior to COVID, Japan had been through a long-term economic crisis. Deflammatory mindset had set in. The country was looking at trying to, through Abenomics, improve its economics. There was a westernization of consumption behavior. An aging population. Japan is one of the oldest populations in the world. Had a declining population. Smaller households. Households of one child, no child, one person are becoming common. And because of an aging population, health consciousness has started rising. And of course, all through Japan and for years and years, it's been very nationalistic in its view. We have made in Australia, they have made in Japan. And for premium items, there always is a preference for Japanese goods or services. ICT, information and communication technologies, improved dramatically over the last 30 years pre-COVID. And as we are judging from today, we're now using the internet on a daily basis to do many things that we would never have thought we would do before. Imports have been rising into Japan as its sustainability of its own production has been declining. Issues like JPA, trade agreements, have made making exporting easier to Japan. Overall, a greater internationalization has been undertaken in Japan. It's been economic, cultural, and above all, individual. Next slide, please. What has been happening in Japan is a confluence of sorry, previous slide, please. Sorry, there's been what is called a confluence of coincidence. Oh, sorry. Next slide. I'm very sorry. Yeah, sorry. These things happening in Japan, the infection controls, they've changed how restaurants are serving. They're no longer, many restaurants are not having a la carte. They're now having set menus. And COVID has really started accelerating change, innovation, and the evolution of how things are happening in Japan. Next slide. Thank you. I'm sorry. Okay. So what has happened? Well, the purchasing behavior of the Japanese are starting to change post-COVID in response to COVID and to the prior economic and social situation. What is emerging now is that price, convenience, and a more healthier lifestyle are becoming the key factors all along the supply chain, from initial purchasing from a wholesaler to the retailer and the consumer. People are looking at innovative ways to get the product from the supplier to the consumer. And this has necessitated cost-effective changes to traditional distribution channels. Next up, please. Now, the traditional distribution channels, usually a large trading house or trading company, either general or specialized, was your normal way of getting in, or through a larger entity, and they would in turn sell downstream to intermediary wholesalers, and then ultimately reach the consumer, everyone adding on price and adding on costs as it goes down the line. Well, that's going on. That's still going on. The traditional methods are still strong. Supermarkets are still strong, in fact, getting stronger. The Japanese are still very risk averse. But post-COVID, things are getting a little bit different. Please, next. Price, convenience, bit of westernization, internationalization, and healthy living are coming to the forefront, with price, convenience, and healthy living leading the way. Whereas previously the Japanese were very premium product oriented, they wanted the best price was really not an issue. Now, price versus value is becoming very, very important. For the millennials, there's a saying called COSPA, meaning cost performance. How does the item value itself versus its price? Is it worth it? The millennials in Japan, in fact, are becoming more frugal. And in fact, frugality is becoming a virtue. Compare that to what is happening in a lot of Western economies, such as Australia. The young are looking at very positively at saving money. Convenience has become very, very important. Having pre-prepared meals, smaller household means smaller portions. These are becoming more important. Westernization, of course, is becoming still strong. And of course, the aging population, declining population, and healthy products reflecting off that. The issues of sustainability, well, is important in this country and in many others. In Japan, really takes a backseat to price, convenience, and healthy living. Now, when you're dealing with market entry, we're not talking just about the consumer. We're now talking about all along the chain. Price and convenience are becoming really important. Next slide, please. And this means that supply chains have to become more resilient and more flexible, and they're becoming shorter. We are getting players in different channels, such as trading houses are now getting into retail. Supermarkets are now importing directly. That's a change, and that is a change that we'll probably experience into the future. And that means new channels are opening up, more direct channels are opening up for the supplier from Australia. Next slide, please. Now, major wholesalers will still continue to play a strong role. Things, again, will continue to be the same, but the traditional channels are shortening for cost and convenience. So we're going to start seeing more direct-to-retailer and direct-to-consumer sales occurring. That will happen in trading houses, that will happen from supermarkets, from convenience stores, and in the Huerca, which is the hospitality and institutional areas. Next one, please. William S. Clark was an American academic that went to the Hokkaido University, then the Agricultural University, in the 1850s, over 150 years ago. And he helped set up that agricultural state or prefecture and the education of future horticulturalists and agriculturalists. Upon leaving Japan, he made a very famous statement: "Boys, be ambitious." And most Japanese will recognize this statement. It goes on to say that we must make a contribution to society. We must look beyond for opportunity. We must be innovative. And that is what is going on in Japan. We are seeing a moving away from the traditional business models of, for example, the trading houses just supplying and wholesaling, being the primary importers of food and beverage, to going into the retail end and branding of products. We're seeing the supermarket segment bypassing the trading houses and going directly into the import stage. So we see both ends of the chain swapping roles. But things still continue to be the same. There are still crossovers, there's still an extension of that chain. But things are changing and being innovative. And of course, as mentioned, there's e-commerce. Next slide, please. Consumer shopping habits and the move towards the internet and online shopping, like here in Australia and like the rest of the world, has really been accelerated as a result of COVID. we're seeing online retail as an emerging opportunity for a lot of people. We're seeing, as we are today, conversations, introductions taking place online. This will continue. The Japanese previously didn't buy a lot of food online. They're now moving to that. It's convenient. It cuts out channels. It's cheaper. What is interesting in the online content is that content itself is becoming a part and parcel of the value-added product it means that if you want to sell into Japan in the future, not only will you have a physical product, but you probably will have to have links to your product on a Japanese language website perhaps, or at least having your retailer have access to how-to videos, how to prepare your food, menus, recipes, ideas. You know, it's becoming a marketing tool, but is also becoming part and parcel of the product. Next one, please. Now, building a Japanese market-sensitive e-commerce entity is very important. There are platforms out there. Direct marketing from Japan is still difficult because of import inspections and restrictions and the like, but that is a future move that we're seeing. The Japanese themselves are moving very strongly into online sales distribution, both to the customer, let's say a butcher shop selling to other shops, and directly to the consumer as well. Next one, please. But one thing, again, to remember, and this is what a professor of mine used to say, just because you eat a steak does not mean you become the cow. Japan is still Japan. Japanese culture is still very strong and permeates the entire economy. The Japanese still prefer to have trusted intermediaries, such as the TIQ, the Queensland Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Austrade, the CCIQ, as ways and means of guaranteeing your product's quality or guaranteeing you as a trade partner. That still goes on, but facilitating that is becoming very interesting, as mentioned by Tak. Next one, please. So what are we seeing post-COVID? We're seeing cutting out of the middleman. People going more direct, trying to be more convenient all along the chain, not only to the consumer, but to the customer and down the train. We're seeing price being much more important. We're seeing Japanese trading houses being strong, but supermarkets, co-ops, convenience stores as well. We're seeing people moving into the retail end that were never there before. We're seeing customers and consumers themselves being more proactive and going online and shopping. The question is, how can we facilitate this? Next one, please. Thank you. Okay. Well, we have a few issues at place, international travel, face-to-face communication, initial customer sourcing. All those issues are being adjusted, adapting, and evolving as we speak. As Tak mentioned, getting together with people directly is difficult now. Well, the Japanese are moving online as we are. They still like the face-to-face, they still would prefer it, but we have to look at compensating activities. One of the issues that is going to come up will be getting the product from the supplier to the consumer. And that physical distribution movement, if shipping is restricted, is going to be an issue. So this is something that the governments are working out, but we have to do it in a timely fashion, especially if we're looking at doing online, which everyone knows. You click your mouse, you expect it tomorrow. That's where having Japanese-based distribution comes to fore. Next one, please. Now, thank you, and hopefully you get some questions.
Thank you, Ken, for the comprehensive presentation outlining the strategy component of the how to succeed in post-COVID Japan. Having the opportunity and having the right strategy in place to capitalize on this opportunity, clearly this is the key to success to our Queensland exporters in their export ventures to Japan. And with this, we will finalize the presentation part of our event, and we will move on to the next section, which is the Q&A section. As I mentioned to you earlier, it could be a lot of questions. The questions which we can't answer right now because we're a little bit time constrained, we'll answer after the webinar to each of you. We'll make sure that we'll do that. Let's start the conversation going. Now, the first question is for Tak. How are the Japanese businesses coping with the new normal? Are there new ways of doing business? And if so, what are they?
Thank you, Diana. Yes, Japan's obviously changing, as Ken mentioned. In fact, there's a bit of a buzzword in Japan at the moment called DX, digital transformation. So we're going online in terms of everything we do, and even the Japanese government, the new Prime Minister just launched the government agency which looks after the digitalization as a priority policy focus. As some of you may know that you've been to Japan and you realize Japan's got two sides of the economy. One's a very, very technologically advanced and high tech, and then you got the quite low tech or still very traditional part of the economy. And I think the government and the businesses are moving to more sort of online and trying to make everything more efficient. I think it should increase the productivity. Obviously, we'll have productivity gains in terms of what we do. For example, for meetings, we could set up a Zoom meeting an hour every hour without allowing for a time to travel from one end of town in Tokyo to the other end of town, because you can just put everybody on the screen. So I think that everybody's aware that we need to change, and particularly when the border is there's a restriction in terms of people movement. Example is e-commerce. There's another example of, like, if it's education, online education, for example. Yeah, thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Tak. It is amazing how post-COVID made us actually all being innovated. Obviously, what is happening in Queensland is happens in Japan, the similar trend: webinars, Zooming, meetings on Zoom, and being with each other, collaborating with each other over the web, which we weren't doing so oftenly before that. So yes, we be pretty innovated in both countries. We can see that. The next question is for Daiji. Daiji, how does TAQ Japan support Queensland clients during the post-COVID?
Oh, hi, Diana. Thank you. Well, I guess prior to COVID we used to have a lot of teleconference and stuff like that, or people could just catch a plane and come over, and we would actually facilitate, set up meetings and stuff like that. And as Tak mentioned, I think the style of meetings changed. The way you do business and why you introduce people obviously changed as well. Everything's virtual. So now we're pretty much now into virtual consultation. So we provide virtual consultation to the Queensland side of the business. If anyone is looking to export, we will actually talk to them, get them to do us a presentation over the online, because obviously share the presentation like the webinar. And once we complete that process, we actually try to identify the key potential customers or the importers, and we would have a virtual meeting set up and facilitate. And I guess, again, post COVID, we could use the Zoom or Teams and all sorts of things to link them up. But before that, people had to come into our office and link them up with our head office. So people had to go into certain places to do video conferencing and stuff like that. With the internet connection now, with the new apps and stuff like that, we can actually do that. And also, Tak also mentioned the virtual trade mission we've done. So that sort of missions can also be virtually done. Obviously, with the Japan, Japanese people still can't travel as well. So we've been doing that sort of a virtual mission as well. And as Ken mentioned, GRQ Japan could certainly support in many ways. So from the feedback to facilitating and connecting and all sorts of things. Thank you.
Thank you, Daiji. It's amazing. The new reality is providing us with the new opportunity. When you're talking about virtual trade mission, I was thinking how our actually not virtual trade mission to Japan in May was cancelled, and how we were really looking forward, us and our members, actually to see you and Tak and the team, and to do some business matching with Japan, Japanese companies. So it's amazing how the things changing nowadays. Now we have to do everything over internet, but let's face it, we can do the best we can do under the circumstances and help Queensland businesses to succeed in Japan. Now, the next question is for Tak. Tak, what major changes for Japan would you expect under the new PM leadership?
Thank you, Diana. Yeah, yes, I think as I start to talk about it, I think the digitalization, the new initiative is really, it cuts through all parts of the economies and industries. I think it's that's going to really increase the productivity, and I think that transforming some parts of the economy into something more efficient. For example, there was even a kind of a joke in probably March, April, when the lockdown started in Japan, and then there are some Japanese middle managers who had to go to the office to do hanko, which is the stamp and seal, instead of e-sign or approval online. So those type of things started to come to the surface, and I saw new minister who is looking after the deregulation in the Japanese government. I think he wants to get rid of fax machines in Japan. There was a headline in Japan Times yesterday that says minister wants to get rid of fax machines in Japan. So there's things like that I think will really change the way Japan traditionally has been doing the business. It's sometimes a very old-fashioned way, and you finish work and you go and have a few drinks and get to know the customers and all that. That's not always possible these days. So I think that's as your first question probably addressed it, we all have to look at the way that we do things differently. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Doug. It's amazing how we do things differently when you're talking about officials going to be presenting in the office, how it's relating to our implementation. Our electronic certification actually is on 90% now boosted because of what's happening in COVID, and we can work on multiple organizations, so everything is fine. So it's amazing how we actually always relate efficiency in a very nice manner. And Amanda just marketing coordinator just mentioned to me that we have a lot of questions online that we have to announce later and respond to you by email if that's possible. So we'll make sure we respond to each of them. And Amanda, do we have any other questions? No. Okay, excellent. We will follow up with you with the rest of the questions which we have online, and also there are some questions we can and Daiji, which we're going to follow up with you at the later stage. industry and a great friend of ours, QJCCI International. Chris Whitecross is the managing director of our Dynamics CCIQ, presents culture and consulting leadership and practical people management in the workplace. Apologies, we had some technology issues. Now that we finished with the Q&A session, very quickly we will introduce our last presenter, which is Chris Whitecross, President of Queensland, Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to make the closing remarks for the webinar. In addition to the President of Queensland, Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Chris Whitecross is the Managing Director of Aerodynamics Pty Ltd and presents, coaches and consults to business on leadership and practical people management in the workplace. Chris is the former Deputy General Manager for the CBA in Tokyo, Japan from 1991 to 1994. Chris has been a member of the Management Committee of the Queensland, Japan Chamber of Commerce and Industry, QJCCI, since 2012 and was elected QJCCI President in 2018. Since 2014, Chris has also been involved with Japanese students, attending Griffith University, presenting on management and business practices, and mentoring with project assignments. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Diana. Well, let me round off today's presentation by thanking Diana, Tak, Daiji, Nami, and Ken for the considerable time and effort that they have taken to prepare their fact-filled presentations. There was some valuable and high-quality content in there. You've been presented here with a lot of information. However, in a broad summary, I think there are two key themes that stand out. It's preparation and opportunity. As highlighted, the COVID crisis has had a significant impact on consumer behaviour, and we must all look again at our potential customers, adapt to whatever the new market circumstances are, and prepare accordingly. We're dealing with an ever-changing market, and in some areas, we need to look at Japan with a new set of post-COVID eyes. But this also presents new and exciting opportunities. As presenters, we've highlighted there is a potential demand and great interest for new products and new methods of delivery. And as always, a degree of success will be closely aligned to the amount of preparation undertaken. This is especially relevant to Japan. As things are constantly changing, we have a new Prime Minister in Japan. Direct daily flights between Brisbane Airport and Tokyo recently commenced for food and freight items, and Japan announced in recent days that it was considering including Australia among a list of 10 countries approved for incoming tourism. So things are happening. And as we come out of this economic slump, if we prepare properly, we can take advantage of these increased opportunities. Interestingly, as a chamber, we are also witnessing increased interest, and despite the difficult economic times, we continue to welcome new members. We're picking up a strong sense that Japan, our long-term, reliable and trusted trading partner, is coming back into the spotlight. The further good news is that we're all here to help you. You're not alone in your endeavours. The CCIQ, TIQ, QJCCI, Austrade and experts like Ken all want you to succeed, and we're here to give you support. We're not competitors. We all work cooperatively together to assist you however possibly we can. With major agreements like JPA, the Free Trade Agreement, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership becoming more widely understood, the structures are there to make your exporting a little easier and a bit more rewarding. We believe some exciting times are ahead for the Japan-Queensland relationship. And being a food and beverage seminar, I want to leave you with a statistic. 60% of the daily calorific content of the average Japanese diet is imported. If that doesn't make every food and beverage exporter excited, nothing will. So with that, I wish you all the very best in your endeavours. Thank you again to our presenters, and I would like to pass you back to Diana. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. And with this, we will conclude our webinar today. Special thanks to our guest presenters, and thank you all for joining us today. We will be following up with an email during the week with the recording of the webinar and the additional information for you. Enjoy the rest of your day.